Start the program shortly. Please take your seat. Friends and guests who are outside, please come inside and take the seat. Namaste. This is second IDIA distinguished lecture. AIDIA, Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Affairs, is 10 years long think tank that has been working in this country since long. Most of you know the institution. It has been working in research and bilateral issues, trade, economy, and many other things. So today we have our distinguished guest, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs from Republic of Azerbaijan, His Excellency Elnur Mammadov. I hope I have pronounced the name correctly. Mammadov, sorry. Nepal and Azerbaijan, we have the bilateral relations since last 30 years. Actually, in 1995, Nepal and Azerbaijan entered into the formal bilateral relationships. Since then, it's almost 3 decades now. But in last 3 decades, we have seen very less interactions, engagements between the two countries. So that's why Mr. Minister is here to expedite these engagements and have more fruitful engagement with Nepal. Both countries are landlocked. Both countries have many more similarities, and we're going to talk about other relations as well. So before starting this program, I would like to ask AIDIA Program Director Sajina to welcome His Excellency Elnur Mammadov. Please. Now I would like to ask AIDIA founder Sunil to deliver a welcome speech.
Namaste. First of all, let me welcome Deputy Minister. Welcome to Nepal. This is your first visit, and let me congratulate you for holding the first bilateral consultative meeting with the Foreign Ministry yesterday. And once again, welcome on behalf of AIDIA and the members of the community here. So it's an immense pleasure for me and AIDIA to host the second AIDIA distinguished lecture today at Dusit Prince here. The first lecture series which we did in November 26, 2020, the then Foreign Secretary of India, Harshvardhan Singla. And such kind of series will be continued, and AIDIA has completed 10 years. As we promote the track to diplomacy, under that initiative, we have organized today's event with the presence of distinguished members from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Member of Parliament, and I'm happy to see the coordinator of the Nepal-Azerbaijan Parliamentary Friendship Group, Dr. Anjan. Thank you so much for coming and supporting AIDIA. And I'm also glad to see my dear friend Ambassador Elnur here, and he's the one who encouraged me to organize this event. Thank you, Ambassador, once again for your support. And my colleagues from media, think tanks, academia, once again welcome to this lecture. So let me brief you a little bit about the engagement between Azerbaijan and AIDIA. AIDIA has a MOU with the AIDIA University in Baku, Azerbaijan, which comes under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And recently, our Research and Development Director, Mr. Kuber, Chalise, visited Baku and conducted his research on the perspective of Azerbaijan's energy policy, which we recently published. And before that, our Operative Director, Ms. Kamana Magar, visited Baku, Azerbaijan in the Caspian Fellowship Program. And even our Member of Parliament and former Minister Raj Kishore Yadavji also visited Baku, Azerbaijan with us, as well as Moise Basnet, Member of Parliament, and a couple of dignitaries from the Office of Attorney General, and a couple of friends visited Baku. And let me tell you that this is the first high-level delegation from Baku, Azerbaijan, and I wish such kind of visit will help us in bringing the countries very closer in days to come. And I hope that the significant number of tourists are visiting from Nepal to Azerbaijan, and I wish Azerbaijani tourists also come to Nepal in a similar manner. And I also see a couple of areas like energy, infrastructure, and tourism, and also the hydropower sectors could be the areas where we can work in a mutual basis in order to strengthen our relationship. And I encourage the Member of Parliament and the coordinator of Nepal-Azerbaijan Parliamentary Group, Dr. Anjan Shakya, to initiate and strengthen the relationship in days to come from the Parliament as well. And once again, welcome Deputy Foreign Minister and the members of the delegation from Azerbaijan in this event. And I hope that Mr. Chalise will have the engaging conversation with him later. Thank you, Kuberji, once again.
Thank you for your welcome remarks, Sunil Kesiji. Now I would like to ask Madam Anjan Shakya to deliver a little bit of her thought on Nepal-Azerbaijan relation. Since she is the coordinator of Nepal-Azerbaijan Parliamentary Working Committee Group, please, Madam, the floor is yours.
Namaste. Good evening. Today's our guest, His Excellency Deputy Minister Elnur Mammadov, and Ambassador Elchin Hosseini, Embassy of Republic of Azerbaijan, honorable delegates, Chairperson Mr. Sunil Kesiji, founder of Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Affairs, distinguished guests here, ladies and gentlemen. I am really delighted to stand before you to express special and growing friendship between Nepal and Azerbaijan. Nepal, high in the mountains, and Azerbaijan, the land of fire, by the Caspian Sea, where Europe meets Asia by the sea. Two nations separated by geography, but united in their journey of transformation and resilience. For a long time, our countries didn't know much about each other. We were just too far apart. But the world is connected now. Distance doesn't stop friendship anymore. For instance, Honorable Deputy Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan is here with us, and also his delegates members are here in Nepal, Kathmandu, in this hall. And also I would like to just remind that the recent private visit of Vice President of Heber Aliyev Foundation, Ms. Leila Aliyev, who is daughter of President of Azerbaijan. She is so warm welcomed in Nepal. Likewise, Right Honorable President Mr. Ramchandra Paudel visited Azerbaijan to participate COP29. Right Honorable Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli visited to participate non-aligned movement in 2019, and also our foreign ministers visited Azerbaijan. Speakers of both countries have cordial relations that I would like to share with you, because they have very good meetings in just back few weeks back in Uzbekistan. Likewise, I got also opportunity to talk with Speaker of Azerbaijan, Honorable Sahiba Gafarova, and she was just elected in NAM. and MPs of Azerbaijan in IPU in my last visit to Uzbekistan in April. And I would like to share here, I also visited Baku to participate COP29, Azerbaijan in November 2024. I visited some historical places over there, like the Flame Towers, Highland Park, Heber Aliyev Center, Astayak Fire Temple, Natural Gas Fire Mountains, in Yanardagh and Gobustan archaeological sites, etc., which is very fabulous. I would like to request you all of here in this hall, you should visit Azerbaijan to see this historical sites, archaeological sites, and the very scenic beauty of Azerbaijan, which I feel in short visit. I didn't get much time to visit several places there, but in future, obviously, I feel that I will visit there again to know the innovation and other technical parts that they deliver. I see that they have very good public service center in one building. From one building, they can deliver public services to their people. So we can collaborate on that issues as well in future. Few Azerbaijani people approached me. You can imagine how. To take picture in the street, I was just walking out in the Baku, capital of Azerbaijan. Then some Azerbaijani people came to me and asked me to have picture, and we have some little chat. And at the time I found that Azerbaijani people are very warm, very easy, and also very nice, very easy to talk, like Nepali people. I feel this little bit similarities in my short visit. Nepal and the Republic of Azerbaijan established diplomatic relations, as already my friend mentioned here, on 28 February 1995. The relations between the two countries have remained cordial and friendly since then. We both want to build strong, independent nations, and we understand our challenges as well. Nepal and Republic of Azerbaijan are working closely at bilateral, regional and multilateral levels towards further strengthening the friendly relations for mutual benefits of the two countries and the people. Right now, the amount of trade between us is very, very small. It means there is a lot of potential. We could trade more things like farm products, textiles, or specialized manufacturing present untapped potential. I believe Azerbaijan-Nepal Business Council and Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Affairs will look upon these opportunities in future. The first historical bilateral political consultations meeting held just yesterday in our foreign ministry. Beyond government and business connections, the most meaningful ties are being formed through educational and cultural exchanges between us. Azerbaijani universities have welcomed Nepalese students in the fields of engineering, medical, international relations, etc. Meanwhile, Azerbaijani scholars are increasingly interested, that I just learned recently, in Nepal's unique ecological and cultural heritage. We are learning each other's traditions, which is very good for both of us, our people. The Republic of Azerbaijan has sent humanitarian aid in the aftermath of the earthquakes in 2015. We have to remember this always, because we have to appreciate, we must appreciate your prompt, kind cooperation in our difficult time. Nepal-Azerbaijan Friendship Group has been recently formed in the Federal Parliament of Nepal. Now I am the coordinator of that friendship group. The partnership between the two legislative assemblies requires cultivation. Both countries are celebrating now 30th anniversary of the establishment of our diplomatic ties. So we need to do more collaborations, as Mr. Sunil Casey already urged, that we need to have high-level visits in Azerbaijan, people-to-people visit between us, Nepal and Israel to and fro. We have to do some concrete activities to celebrate this occasion at this moment. On the international stage, both Nepal and Azerbaijan have emerged as constructive voices promoting peaceful resolution of conflicts, regional integration, and sustainable development. Our nations have found common ground in forums like the United Nations and to the non-aligned movement. Looking to the future, we need to focus on how we can grab this potential to the reality. Distinguished audience, Nepal-Azerbaijan relationship demonstrates how nations can forge meaningful connections despite geographical distance we do have. To make this partnership even stronger, the path forward requires sustained efforts. I would like to add some of the points here, like direct air connectivity between our capitals, easier ways for people to get visas for tourism and business, to get visa of Azerbaijan very easy. Even less than 24 hours, I received such e-visa. More business groups visiting each other to find trade opportunities, educational partnerships focused on technical and vocational skills, cultural initiatives that reach beyond elite circles to engage broader publics. At the last, I would like to reiterate that today the world is interconnected, even we are very far from our geographical distance, where distance is no barrier now to meaningful cooperation, and where nations find strength in both their unique identities and their shared aspirations. So long live Nepal-Azerbaijan relations. I thank you all.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Shakya. She rightly highlighted the differences, the geographical differences, but still the similarities also. Already she said, 1995 till 25, it's almost 30 years. And in 30 years, yesterday we had the first political consultation meeting between Azerbaijan and Nepal. So I think this is the beginning. There's a lot of space where we can work together. Now I would like to call upon Ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador of Azerbaijan to Nepal, Elchin Husenli, to introduce the Minister, and he'll give his keynote speech.
Your Excellency Mr. Mammadov, Deputy Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan, Your Excellency Dr. Anjan Shakya, Member of the National Assembly and the Coordinator for Nepal-Azerbaijan Friendship Group, Parliament of Nepal, dear Sunil Ji, the founder of the Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Affairs, dear members of the Diplomatic Corps in Nepal, dear representatives of the Foreign Ministry, government agencies, distinguished members of the society, Nepali society, academia, good afternoon, namaskar. First of all, thank you very much for being with us here today. We know that it's a public holiday in Nepal, and our sincere apologies for making you work today, but your presence here signifies the importance that the Nepali society attaches to relations with Azerbaijan. I've been honored to be appointed as Ambassador of Azerbaijan to Nepal last year, and I was honored to present my credentials in October last year. Today, the speeches that were made before me, we heard a lot of, the most repeated word was first, for the first time. First time visit, first time meeting of presidents, first time delegation from Azerbaijan to Nepal, etc., etc. So this is only the beginning. We in Azerbaijan, and the government of Azerbaijan is very resolved in its intention to develop relations with Nepal across all spheres. Let's call it multi-pronged approach to our ties. I also want to commend sincerely the AIDIA and Sunil Ji. For those who don't know, what started as academic contacts between AIDIA and their counterpart in Azerbaijan, thanks to their efforts is now slowly transforming into broader relations across many spheres. And in order not to repeat what has been said by Dr. Shakya and not to preempt what is going to be said by His Excellency the Deputy Foreign Minister, I just want to thank everybody. Again, the idea of having this event today, we nurtured it for some time and we were looking for opportunity for it. Why we kept the topic broad is to give you the crux of the foreign policy of Azerbaijan, why Nepal is important for us, who we are in the international arena, what is our bilateral relations, our approach to multilateral issues, and of course to present Azerbaijan to you through the words of the foreign policy executioner in Azerbaijan. Thank you very much again, and with this I'm delighted to give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador Elnur Mammadov. Thank you very much.
Namaste. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ambassadors, Dr. Shakya, the founder of the institution, Mr. Surajit, thank you very much for being here today. I'm delighted to be part of today's discussions, and I would like to thank you for spending your public holiday in Nepal with Azerbaijan. I think it's a good start and it's a good choice. So let me, before we go to the presentation, say a few words why we're here. So it may be surprising, but despite the fact that Azerbaijan and Nepal established its diplomatic relations 30 years ago, the first high-level visit and the first contacts between the presidents of two countries took place just a few months ago. And that was as part of the visit of His Excellency President Kodel of Nepal to Azerbaijan in order to attend COP29 last November. And it was received by our President Excellency Ilham Aliyev. And during that meeting, that was the first interaction where the Excellencies had a detailed discussion of how we could enhance and strengthen our bilateral ties. And as a result of the agreement that was reached at that meeting, yesterday and today, I'm leading a delegation in my role as Deputy Foreign Minister, a delegation of my colleagues from various state agencies, such as the Minister of Economy, the Minister of Agriculture, State Tourism Agency, Azerbaijan Agency for the Promotion of Investment and Export, and my colleagues, along with the ambassador, are here in order to explore the opportunities for us to deepen and enhance bilateral cooperation between the two friendly nations. Yesterday we started, and I would like to thank Dr. Shakya for such a wonderful presentation of the current state of the bilateral ties, and the fact that you mentioned, Doctor, that yesterday we had the first political consultations between the foreign offices of two countries. And we had the opportunity during almost 2 hours to take a broad view of where we currently stand and where we want to be in the next 3 or 5 years from now. And I want to thank my colleagues, the Foreign Secretary Rai at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nepal for giving us this opportunity and for hosting us yesterday. So as part of today's presentation, I'll be speaking about the foreign policy priorities of Azerbaijan. But since I'm cognizant of the fact that probably you don't know much about Azerbaijan, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union, when Azerbaijan regained its independence from the Soviet Union and it started its new journey that we have embarked on for the last 3 decades now. I want to start with some points on the history. If you go back and look at the last 2 centuries, what Azerbaijan was looked like 2 centuries ago, which challenges we had at the time, how we became the part of the Soviet Union, and then our independent journey of the last 30 years. So I won't be torturing you with centuries and centuries back, so I decided to take a quick snapshot of the last 2 centuries. So in fact, Azerbaijan was divided between Russian and Persian Empire. Persian Empire and Persia is now known as Iran, because we border Russia in the north and we border Iran in the south. As a result of the Russian-Persian wars of 1813 and 1828. And this led to the separation of ethnic Azerbaijanis across two countries now. And in fact, the population of Azerbaijan now is around 10 million, just beyond 10 million, while around 25 to 30 million ethnic Azerbaijanis, who most of them speak fluent Azerbaijanis, they live in the territory of Iran. And that is the outcome of the separation of these two wars that took place between the two empires 2 centuries ago. The first democratic republic declared by Azerbaijan, that was in 1918, at the end of the First World War. And Azerbaijan was the first country in the Muslim East which declared a secular, parliamentary, democratic republic. And that was our choice made back in 1918. And actually pioneered for equal rights for all, including women's suffrage, women's right to vote. And that was quite revolutionary back in those days, because the country, as now, it's predominantly Muslim, it has predominantly Muslim population. And these decisions, obviously, during those years were extremely unpopular. But nevertheless, that was a choice made by the leaders of Azerbaijan back then. And then there was a period while Azerbaijan was part of the Soviet Union, because the Soviet troops invaded in 1920. This Azerbaijan Democratic Republic, unfortunately, short-lived for roughly 23 months, less than 2 years. And in 1920, in April, after the invasion of the Soviet troops, Azerbaijan became a part of the Soviet Union. And that lasted for almost 70 years. And after that, after the collapse, we regained our independence. Now, you can see on the slide, there's a cover from the Newsweek, a very popular American magazine, and that was a cover from 1989. And in 1989, Newsweek declared Azerbaijan People of the Year, Azerbaijani People of the Year. And the reason was because of the liberation movement that we started in the Soviet Union in the last years of 1980s. And that was pretty much, as many people believe, the events that led to the fall of the Soviet Union. So this movement for liberation and our desire always to have our independent state was the bedrock of our history in the last few centuries. And finally, we gained independence in 1991. And in the meantime, while we started this journey, we faced two immediate challenges. One is internal instability. There were a lot of separatist groups within Azerbaijan calling on separation of Azerbaijan and creation of small autonomies or states, or separating and uniting with other countries, neighboring countries. But the most serious challenge was a territorial claim advanced by our western neighbor, which is Armenia, on parts of the sovereign and internationally recognized territories of Azerbaijan. So as part of that irredentist claim, Azerbaijani territories, as a result of the First War, was occupied by Armenia in a period between 1991 and 1994. And the result of that war was 20% of the territories under occupation, almost 1 million refugees and internally displaced persons, both from the territory of Armenia, because Azerbaijanis comprised around 10% of the population of Armenia at the time, during the Soviet times, and was actually the largest national minority in Armenia. The ethnic cleansing of those Azerbaijanis, around 250,000 living in Armenia as a result of this conflict, and then around 750,000 living in Azerbaijan itself from the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. So that left us with almost 1 million refugees and displaced persons. And at the time, back in 1991, we had a population of 7 million. And 1 million out of 7 million was a refugee. And if you look at it on a per capita basis, if you look at in UNHCR statistics at the time, we had the highest number of refugees per capita in the early 1990s. So how did the international community react to this armed aggression and occupation? There were 4 resolutions of the United Nations Security Council adopted in 1993. which condemn the occupation of sovereign and internationally recognized lands of Azerbaijan, and it called on Armenia. They called on Armenia to ensure complete, unconditional, and immediate withdrawal of all the troops, of all the occupying troops from the territories of Azerbaijan. Now, unfortunately, Armenia ignored those resolutions. For almost 30 years, we were in negotiations in order to achieve the compliance with the UN Security Council resolutions, because we have always believed and continue to believe in the rule of law and in the bedrock of, and the basic principles of international law. There was a OSCE Minsk group, co-chaired an institution which was created within the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, called Minsk Group, and it was co-chaired by US, France, and Russia, and the purpose of that Minsk Group was to resolve the conflict. But unfortunately, during 3 decades, no tangible results were achieved. And that led, and this is a photo from those days, from the refugee camp in Azerbaijan, and these are the conditions in which almost 1 million of Azerbaijanis lived for many years. So just to visualize it and make it more illustrative. So you see the territory of Azerbaijan. So we're bordering Russia in the north, so Georgia in north-west, Iran in the south, and then to our west is Armenia, and the red highlighted part is the territory that was occupied by Armenia during the first, as a result of the first Karabakh War. So, and that comprised almost 20% of our internationally recognized territories. And the reason why I continue to stress that these territories are recognized as Azerbaijani lands is because there are some disputes around the world, territorial disputes, which are recognized by the United Nations as disputed territories. So even from the perspective of international law, there could be claims on certain territories, but there is no single standing taken by the United Nations and its Security Council on whether the territory belongs to one particular state or not. So they treat it as a disputed territory. In our case, it was an aggression and occupation, because at no time, not a single moment, starting from the first Karabakh War till today, there was any question about whether Azerbaijan had sovereignty over those lands. That was a common and universally accepted position of the international community, of the UN, and by the way, including Armenia, because it's never recognized the puppet regime that it installed in those territories as an independent state. So that takes us to the second Karabakh War. So I won't be again going into too many details. Within 44 days, our army liberated all of the lands, and we had the territory where the Russian peacekeeper contingent was temporarily deployed, and that was in November 2020 as a result of the trilateral declaration, and in September 2023 we fully restored de facto control and sovereignty over those territories, and the Russian peacekeepers left in May 2024. So this is the first time in the last 3 decades, after we regained our independence, that we were in full control of our recognized territories. So this is a photo from one of the cities that was under occupation for almost 3 decades. So some of the foreign journalists who visited, and it's called Ağdam, so some of the foreign journalists who visited Ağdam, they call it Hiroshima of the Caucasus, because of the large-scale devastation and obliteration that was wreaked by the Armenian occupying forces during the war and during the years of occupation. So this was a vibrant city of 40,000 people back during the Soviet times, and this is what we faced after we liberated these territories. There wasn't a single building standing there, and all the private and public dwellings, all the infrastructure was completely destroyed. So, and this is a challenge that we have to face and have a plan in place on how we revive these territories. So, post-conflict recovery. So in order to have some systematic and unified position on how we treat these territories, liberated territories, now the government adopted the Great Return Program. And the reason it's called the Great Return, because we're bringing people back, the displaced persons that have been longing for this moment and for the return to their homeland one day, and this is exactly the moment that they are living through now. And we are in the process of bringing back, we have brought back around 20,000 people by now, and we are in the process of bringing back and plan to bring back around 140,000 people by the end of 2026. And that's a plan that the government has put in place. Now, in order for us to do so, of course, we have to bring lives to these territories. And we have invested already around $12 billion in infrastructure building, in construction of roads and tunnels in these territories, in construction of hospitals and schools, in order to make sure that people can actually go back to their normal lives and can get employed and can actually enjoy all the infrastructure that they need to have in place in order to have decent living. One of the challenges that we currently face, that we started facing after the end of the Second Karabakh War, is heavy contamination of these territories with mines. During the years of occupation, Armenia planted around 1.5 million mines into these territories. There are also unexploded ordnances, both from the first, but more importantly from the Second Karabakh War. And in order for you to actually implement those infrastructure projects, in order for you to bring people back, you have to clear those lands from those mines and unexploded ordnances. That's a very long, tedious, and financially intensive and resourceful program. So we have been able to clear around only 13%, 1/3, of our territory, of this territory so far, but the estimates are we will need another 20 to 30 years minimum in order to clear the entire territories. And that, of course, comes with a cost, so the estimate is that we may need to spend around $25 billion in order to achieve this quite a difficult mission. So since demining is one of the priorities, we are also now working with a number of countries in order to declare demining as a SDG 18. So you know there are 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, declared by the UN and to be achieved by 2030. And one of the important SDGs that we need, at least at a national level, we recognize it as our priority, but we also have a campaign to get this recognized on an international level as well. So I'm sure you remember how those territories look like only a few years ago when we liberated, and I showed you one of the cities, Ardam, and I'm proud to show you how these territories look like now. So this is the Pearl of Karabakh, the city town called Shusha. It's at the height of 1400 above the sea level, and we call it the Pearl of Shusha because it has been historically the cradle of many musicians and poetess and poetries and artists in Azerbaijan. They were born in Shusha. And this is the first residential complex, so you can see our president standing there in the middle, and the internal displaced persons who are now brought back in order to go back to their homeland and go back to their normal lives. So what happens after the conflict? So again, without torturing you with many details, there are pretty much 3 streams between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And the reason I'm spending so much time on this, first, it has been our foreign policy priority in the last 3 decades, because you can't be prioritized anything else if your territories are under occupation. And that goes without saying, so that is to state the obvious. And the second, because without the proper peace and normalization between Azerbaijan and Armenia, you can't really speak of the stable and prosperous and economically developed South Caucasus. So we are the region of South Caucasus with Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia, 3 countries represented in that region between Russia and Iran. So 3 streams. One is a peace agreement, and I'm a member of our team from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that has been negotiating the peace agreement with Armenia. So despite the fact that we defeated the Armenian occupying army, we were the first to offer peace to Armenia, because our president is a visionary person and he always thinks a few steps ahead. And there is an ample understanding that without stable South Caucasus And without normalization and peace with Armenia, we won't be able to unlock the full potential of our region. We have been able to finalize the text of the peace agreement, but in the meantime, there are two impediments still on our way that does not allow us to sign the agreement. So first is that in the constitution of Armenia, there are still territorial claims against Azerbaijan, and this is the main law. Since this is the main law of the country, they have to remove those territorial claims, because without that, any peace agreement would not be valid. And second, the Minsk group that I mentioned that failed to deliver any results, it has to be formally dissolved, because it was set up in order to resolve the conflict. But obviously, if now two countries agree that the conflict has been resolved, then there is no need for the Minsk group. And for us, it's important because that would show that Armenia is serious about establishing peace and normalization with Azerbaijan. And the risk that we see in not fulfilling these conditions is because of very strong revanchist groups within Armenia that call for a new war in order to again occupy those lands. We have to make sure that the peace agreement that we will sign, it won't be only with this government, but with the people of Armenia, with the state of Armenia. And then we have the delimitation process and the communication, unblocking the communications in the region. So that is all on the conflict. Now I turn to our diplomatic leadership on an international scale. First and foremost, as I said, we haven't used this last 30 years in order to deepen our ties between the two friendly nations. But the most popular format for our interaction and diplomacy was an international, various international platforms. And as you know, in the 1960s, one of the interesting trends at the time was the fact that many countries of what we now call the Global South was presented with the choice of siding either with the Soviet Union or siding with the US. So you had to make a choice between the two, whether you go for the capitalistic system or you want to join the communist bloc. And at the time, also including countries like Nepal and a few other countries, the founding members of the non-aligned movement, this movement emerged in order to present a third choice for many countries who didn't want to get stuck between the two big powers. And as a result of that, the non-aligned movement came about. And Azerbaijan, as part of its priority and as part of its aspiration also not to be part of any military blocs, joined the non-aligned movement in 2011. And only 8 years down the road, in 2019, we were elected by the full support of 120 member states of NAM as the chair of the non-aligned movement. And by the way, this is the second largest institution after the United Nations if you look at the number of members. So between 2019 and 2023, we had the chairmanship. Actually, as you know, normally it's for 3 years, but with the full support of all the members, including Nepal, our chairmanship was extended for another year, because I believe that member states appreciated all the initiatives that Azerbaijan brought to the table as part of its chairmanship. So first, just a few of them I'll mention first. Unfortunately, our chairmanship, it coincided with the onset of the pandemic in 2020. And you may remember one of the dire problems that many countries of the Global South faced was hypocrisy shown by the West with respect to these countries. And the hypocrisy was in the fact that we've witnessed what we call vaccine nationalism, when many Western countries, having all the resources, were stockpiling vaccines without providing affordable and equal access to the members of the Global South, to low to mid-income countries. And that was one of the issues that our president highlighted during its initiative of convening the extraordinary session of the United Nations General Assembly. And he put it on the agenda that this is something we need to fight against. Because obviously you can't preach equality and human rights on the one hand, and in the meantime, when the first crisis strikes, you're only thinking about your own people and you're closing the borders. And even if you have stockpiled all the vaccines you need, you are not providing access to other countries, because you're openly saying, my people is my priority, and I don't care much about the rest of the international community. And that was one of the fights that we picked. We picked it consciously, and we started fighting against this nationalism. And we, as part of this campaign, we have been able to, through the United Nations Human Rights Council, also through the UNGA, adopt a number of resolutions condemning this practice and calling on all the countries, especially of the collective West, to provide affordable and equal access to vaccines. And we were shoulder to shoulder with you in that fight against that injustice. So we also provided 10 million to the World Health Organization and provided humanitarian support to and financial support to more than 80 countries in order to fight the pandemic. So this is one of the high-level events in July in 2023 in Azerbaijan. You can see our president, you can see my minister sitting right to him. And that is a ministerial meeting of NAM Coordinating Bureau in Azerbaijan, where we had a number of distinguished heads of states and governments, also had the distinguished guests from Nepal. The second would be obviously COP29. So by now I'm sure you're aware that Azerbaijan is still the president of COP29. We were elected also by the unanimous support of 200 countries who are the members of the UN Convention on Climate Change. And as part of this, we hosted the summit where, fortunately, this first contact between the high dignitaries took place between the two presidents, and that actually led to this delegation that I'm leading in Nepal now. So just to remind ourselves, many people now refer to Baku COP as a historic COP because we have been able to achieve a number of historic outcomes. The first one is new collective quantified goal. You may remember for many years the parties to the climate convention could not agree on a new NCQG, and since 2009 the number was around $100 billion, and the essence of that number is this is how much we need to galvanize and collect in order to fight the adverse consequences of climate change. And we were able, with the consensus of that many states, to raise that level to $300 billion. And so that is our target by 2035. Our meaning not Azerbaijan, meaning all of us, because we're part of this bigger community. The second is part of our support. We also, as part of this event, we also provided support and put on the agenda the plight and challenges faced by the small island developing states and the landlocked countries, such as Azerbaijan and Nepal. So we use that platform in order to also speak about the problems that we face. And most of them are, of course, also linked to the adverse consequences of the climate change. Article 6 carbon markets, which allow you to actually swap and trade in carbon credits. That is also an important achievement. And finally, last not least, is the loss and damage fund. And many countries, especially those that are in top 10 of the most vulnerable countries, susceptible to climate change, they've been waiting for this fund for many years, because now you do have access once a force majeure event hits your country and you need to get access to immediately get access to funding. The loss and damage fund is fully operational, and that has also been in discussions for many years. And here you can see a photo from that summit of November 13th, I believe, in Azerbaijan, with President Padel being one of the distinguished guests at our event. So a few words in terms of other organizations. The Organization of Turkic States, we led the foundation of this organization in 2009 because we're a Turkic nation. It's a Turkic ethnic ethnos and the language. And so that organization unites Turkey, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, the countries of the Central Asia, which you may be more familiar with. And actually, this is one of the most promising organizations because it's not just an organization for the sake of organization. There are many infrastructure projects, such as the Middle Corridor, that actually provides for the shipment of goods from China to Europe and in the opposite direction. Transportation projects now, Digital Silkway project, which is about the fiber cable, optic cable that will connect the networks of two regions, actually taking the connection from Europe to Asia through the Caspian Sea. The export of green energy and many other projects that actually unite this. So there is actually the economic logic and the premise behind this organization. This year we also chaired the Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia. The organization, the short word for it is SICA. And as members of SICA, we also use this opportunity to expand our cooperation with Nepal. And in 2 years ago, we chaired the Economic Cooperation Organization, which are 10 organizations, 10 countries of our region. And also there's an Organization of Islamic Cooperation, being the majority Muslim nation. We are a member of that organization for many years now. So energy security is one of the things that comes to your mind whenever you hear the name Azerbaijan, because the first reaction to that and the first mind of any diplomat or non-diplomat, regardless, would be oil and gas, because we are actually the first country in the world that started the industrial oil production in the middle of the 19th century, in 1848. And then the first country in the world that started the offshore oil production in the middle of the 20th century, during the Soviet times. So as part of our aspiration to have a resilient and independent economy, and without resilient economy, without your economic independence, obviously you can't have any real political independence. And in our region, it is the primary objective of any country would be to have the real political independence, given that we are surrounded by big powers and the influential players. We started the construction of oil and gas pipelines that actually I will show you on the map. So you can see Azerbaijan, which is on the western shore of the Caspian Sea. By the way, we call it the Caspian Sea, but it's a lake because it has no direct connection with the natural connection with the ocean. There's only the Volga Don Canal, which connects it to the Black Sea, but that's an artificial canal. So the resources, the rich hydrocarbon resources coming mostly from the offshore fields in Azerbaijan, in our sector of the Caspian Sea, are transported via Georgia. You see Tbilisi, which is the capital of Georgia, and then to Turkey, which is our closest ally. We have allied relationship with Turkey. And there are a number of projects. One, we started with Baku Novorossiysk, which is a port in the Black Sea, the Russian port, and that was the first oil of 1997. Then we built Baku Supsa. Supsa is another port that belongs to Georgians on the Caspian Sea in the early 2000s. And now the largest and the main export pipeline is Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan. So you see Ceyhan here, right? It's a port on the Mediterranean Sea, and that's main offload point for our crude oil. So we produce around 30 million tons of crude oil a year, and we are a member of OPEC Plus, the format that actually regulates the prices in the oil market. So that was crude oil. The second was natural gas, because obviously we also have resources of natural gas, around 2.6 trillion cubic meters. So in order to export that much of natural gas, which many people believe would be sufficient for Azerbaijan for the next 100 years, we started the construction in 2011 of the Southern Gas Corridor. You can see it starts here. It started as South Caucasus Pipeline, SCP, which started as an export of pipeline or export of gas from Azerbaijan to Georgia. Then we constructed this TANAP part. It's called TANAP. This is the second part of it, through the territory of Turkey. And then we constructed the last segment, which is called TAP, Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, because it goes through it's a submarine, it goes through the Adriatic Sea, and that brings our natural gas to Italy. So this is 3,500 kilometer integrated pipeline, which is quite unique. If you're aware with the scale of this project, 3,500 is considered as one of the largest connection points. And that actually took us almost 9 years to connect. And as a result, in December 2020, we had the first dispatch of natural gas to Italy. And now, in light of the war in Ukraine, starting from February 2022, Azerbaijan actually acted as one of the major alternative suppliers of gas to Europe. Because before the war in Ukraine, Russia was procuring around 40% of its natural gas demands from Russia. around 25% of crude oil was coming from Russia. Currently, as I said, we're one of the major alternative suppliers because you need to have a pipeline for natural gas, and the only alternative to pipeline is LNG. LNG normally requires long-term contracts. They are quite expensive, and if you have the pipeline, obviously, with contracting with Azerbaijan and buying natural gas through this pipeline is a better option for many of the countries, most of the countries of the Eastern Europe. So we are, by the way, we are quite a significant supplier of natural gas for countries like Bulgaria, for countries like Serbia, for countries like Hungary, because we provide around 1/3 of the domestic demand in those countries. So that takes us to the third project I want to tell you about, which is green energy. As I mentioned, despite the fact that we have actually made our fortune on oil and gas, we are also cognizant of the fact that there is a dramatic shift now from fossil fuel to green energy. And you better be in this game sooner than later, because there are certain things, steps that need to be taken at the right point in time. And we started this transformation a few years ago. So you can see a number of wind farm infrastructure to your in the right-hand side of the slide. So our current target is to get, if you look at our overall total installed capacity, we're around 8 gigawatt in our national electric grid. So we are hoping to get around 30 to 32% of that through the renewable sources by year 2027. And in order to do that, so it's not just a declaration, we've started putting in place a number of projects. So I'm listing here quite a list of famous companies in this field. One of them is United Arab Emirates, UAE's Masdar, which works in more than 40 countries, and they have already commissioned 230 megawatt plant. It's a solar plant in Azerbaijan. There's Saudi Arabia's Aqua Power. They are building the wind farm for Azerbaijan. We have BP from the UK investing also in Jabrail. Jabrail is in a liberated area of Azerbaijan, in the liberated territories, and China's China Energy, which is also quite an active player in this market in general. And as you know, most of the, if not of the solar panels that are used for solar farms are produced in China. And by the way, our president was on a state visit to China just a week ago, and we had more than 20 agreements signed between Azerbaijan and China, and we elevated the level of our relationship to the full comprehensive strategic partnership. So we are deepening our ties with China. So green energy transition, there are a number of projects. One is in Black Sea Energy Corridor. That would allow you, let me just skip this to show this. So that would allow us to go, whatever green energy we produce, the excess energy that we believe we will have in our national grid, we'll start exporting that green energy, the electricity, through the Black Sea. You see the Black Sea here to Romania and Hungary, and also Bulgaria is now joining this project. So this is a project of roughly 1,000 kilometers of submarine cable, taking the green energy from Azerbaijan through this cable to the countries of Eastern Europe. Now Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, they are joining this project, so we will have the Caspian Sea cable as well. And as a result, we will have the green energy corridor taking the green energy from this part, from the Central Asia to Eastern Europe. So we are again in the middle of this very important project. So these are the two, Black Sea Energy and EU Caspian. That's one called EU Caspian Green Corridor. And by the way, one of the reasons why it's also important, and Europe is, especially the European Union is interested in financing and in supporting this project, is the fact that as you have more green energy, more energy generated through the renewable sources, that actually frees up natural gas that we're currently using in order to generate electricity. And with that freed up gas, you can actually sell it, export that to Europe, which is in more need of natural gas. So as we develop more of renewable sources, that also allows us to export more gas. So there is this correlation between the two. The connectivity project, it's middle corridor. Let me show you again on the map. So the middle corridor is quite famous these days also because of the war in Ukraine. Before you can see this northern corridor, which was conventionally or traditionally used by China in order to ship goods from the Siam and other ports in China to Europe. It would take it from Russia to Belarus through Poland, then to Europe. Now, because of the war here, because of the instability, because of those facts, and that actually have very negative impact on everything you do, first in terms of safety, obviously, second in terms of the insurance premiums that you have to pay to insurance companies, it has become very costly and less safe to use the Northern Corridor. And that is why China is now considering, and not only considering, but has actually started using, but considers expanding the use of the Middle Corridor, which actually take the goods from China to Kazakhstan, then through the Caspian Sea, through the ferries here to Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey. And this is a shorter route. It is around 10 to 12 days. That's how long it takes to get the goods from this part of the world to the Black Sea basin. And based on that, we've seen dramatic increase of around 85% traffic increase last year for the goods going from China to Europe, and also in the vice versa direction. So this is the connectivity corridor. And in order for us to be competitive in the market, we started building many years ago the large infrastructure projects. For example, here in the Caspian Sea, we have the largest international sea trade port. It has a handling capacity of 15 million tons a year, and now we're expanding that to 25 million tons. We have the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railroad with 1 million tons, which we are expanding to 5 million tons. We have one of the best and state-of-the-art shipbuilding facilities. So we produce ourselves ships that we also sell, but we also use them for our own transportation projects. So we produce around 6 to 8 vessels a year. And we also have free economic zones close to this sea trade port. Azerbaijan, by the way, has the largest commercial fleet in the Caspian Sea. We have more than 50 vessels. And we also have 3 Aframax vessels in the Black Sea. Although we are not one of the Black Sea countries, but we do have large vessels here as well, 3 vessels over there. So the other corridor is the one that actually may be interesting to this part of the world as well, is North-South corridor. It goes from Russia through our territory to Iran and then to India, mostly to Mumbai port. And this is one of the corridors that we're also now expanding with Russia and Iran. And speaking of Iran, the president of Iran was a state visit to Azerbaijan just 2 days ago. And part of the discussion was about the North-South corridor and its expansion. So it has around 5 million ton capacity now, the actual traffic, but the plan is to take it to at least to 15 million tons. The last slide, not to make it too boring for you, it's about digital transformation and technology. So of course, we are in the 21st century, and that warrants that we engage in digital transformation. So as Professor mentioned earlier, there is a public service called Asan. Asan in Azerbaijani means easy, and that was introduced by our president back in 2012 in order to combat corruption, especially petty corruption in government agencies. So in fact, it's a unique model which actually allows Azerbaijan to provide most of the government services, almost 400 government and private services through one public agency. It has centralized Asan centers across Azerbaijan, and this is one of the projects that I also mentioned to my counterpart yesterday during the political consultations. If there's a need and there's interest in Nepal, this is one of the things that we actually export as a service. And we have worked with more than 30 countries now on Asan model, and some countries of Asia and of the African continent, they have started deploying Asan model in their countries in order to combat corruption and provide increased transparency and provide the highest level of government service to its citizens. Second is a space program where we have an agency called Azercosmos in charge of our space programs. Now, we're one of the rare countries in our region, actually the first country that launched its own satellite. Now we have 3 satellites. And this is one of the areas where we cooperate with some of the countries as we rent redundant capacities in those satellites, also provide satellite imagery and all other services connected to that. And the last point is we, in partnership with the World Economic Forum, we established the Fourth Revolution and Innovation Center in Azerbaijan, the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is, along with the World Economic Forum, is a place for us to work on policy frameworks for AI, for artificial intelligence, for blockchain, for digital trade. And as part of those projects, we have piloting AI projects in customs in Digital Silkway Initiative. And our objective now is to turn Azerbaijan to a data transit hub, because we've worked on infrastructure projects, but as I said, time passes by and priorities change. So we need to keep abreast of these latest developments. I believe this takes us to where we are with Nepal. So you can see this photo from this historic meeting back in November in Azerbaijan. So we have quite a number of companies registered in Azerbaijan with Nepal capital. We establishment of diplomatic relations. But what strikes me most is the fact that in this last 3 decades, we haven't signed a single document. There's not a single agreement between the two nations, between the two countries. And that is something that is in need of urgent rectification. And that's why yesterday we had a discussion with my counterpart, Foreign Secretary Rai, and we agreed that we will be fast-tracking a number of agreements between the two countries in order to start prioritizing them and hopefully getting them signed later on this year and next year. We have very good cooperation in education. In fact, we have had a number of students from Nepal who won scholarships from the Azerbaijani government. We provide scholarships, around 100 scholarships a year, to the members of the non-aligned movement and some other organizations where we are a member, and I'm glad to report that a number of bright students from Nepal, they won those scholarships and they currently study at the leading universities in Azerbaijan. And as I said, now it's a new page of our bilateral ties, so we have very high hopes for enhancing and expanding our bilateral ties going forward, but our major platform for cooperation so far was the United Nations and the non-aligned movement. But that helped us to build this foundation on which we're eager to build new, enhanced and deepened ties between the two friendly nations. That concludes my presentation, and welcome to Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for very detailed presentation. Now we'll have a little bit of discussion here. Then we'll open the floor. Since there's a huge crowd and a lot of people might have questions because of this presentation, I'll not take much time, but we'll have a short discussion, then I'll come to the floor.
Your mic is also working, I think.
I hope so, yes.
Okay. After this elaborate presentation, I think there's a lot of question in your minds, and so do I, but I will take a long time because I want the crowd to ask the question directly to His Excellency. First, I will start with a very pertinent question, like the economy. When you're speaking about, when you're giving the slide, you talk about the economy, and that's a very important thing nowadays. The Russia or America or Ukraine, all these countries' diplomacy is revolving around economy. So Azerbaijan is one of the strong economies post-USSR era states. So how did you manage to make your strong economy? So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Thank you for your question. So first of all, indeed, it's one of the most resilient economies in our region. If you look at the statistics, we have one of the lowest amount of foreign debt compared to GDP. So it's around slightly above 6% of our GDP, which stands at currently $72 billion. Obviously, in the early days, in the 90s, it all started with the revenues that were generated through those oil and gas projects. So that's still a part of our important part of our export and the generation of government revenues. In the last 10 to 15 years, we started diversifying away from oil and gas also to various other projects such as infrastructure. For example, we see a future in, well, within the energy sector, it's green energy, that's given, but also if we look at beyond energy, that would be connectivity and transportation. Because it's important that you rely on the transit routes among the countries that actually undertake huge trade, and that allows you to leverage your geographic position for being a transit country for the trade. And of course, that's one of the areas where I believe we will be generating more revenues going forward. We also diversify away from energy to tourism, to agriculture. We have the representative from State Tourism Agency with us. Last year we had around 3 million tourists for the population of 10 million, so we generate around 30% tourists for the size of our population, and we are very much interested in expanding that base. And for that, of course, we simplify visa through ASAN that I mentioned earlier. Through this public agency, we also introduced electronic visas. So before you had to go to our embassy, otherwise when Nepal is on a list of countries that can actually apply through this simplified procedure and get visa quite easily, so without going through this all of the bureaucracy that existed before. And of course construction, and as I said, now part of this economic growth is a liberation of our new lands, because government spending a lot of money in bringing life back to those lands once occupied by Armenia. And as I said, we spend already $12 billion, which is quite an amount for the size of our budget. And we are planning to spend another chunk of investment and funding in order to revive those territories. So this is how it started, and this is how it continues. And of course, digitalization is part of our world, so we also hope to be turning our economy into a digital economy as we move forward.
You said you have diversified your oil-based, fossil fuel-based economy to tourism and production and agriculture. But still, green transition of Azerbaijan, what you also talked about in the slide. Azerbaijan is one of the major producer of oil and gas and major consumer of oil and gas also. So in this scenario, how do you transform, how do you transit that fossil fuel to green energy?
So first, we're not the major. We're one of the players. Say we're not a member of OPEC, but we're a member of OPEC Plus, which is an expanded format of 23 countries. Second, actually, if you look at our contribution to to global warming and the adverse consequences of climate change, the contribution, if you look at the greenhouse gases, it's only 0.1%. So despite the fact that we're an oil and gas country, in terms of our negative contribution to this global warming, it's only 0.1%. And that actually speaks to the fact that there are many stigmas or misperceptions about some of the oil companies, including Azerbaijan. We do much more and target to have net carbon emission by 2050 in the liberated areas, because we're very serious about this transition from oil and gas projects to green energy. In the meantime, our view of this is that you cannot do this overnight. As you know, green energy, normally it's considered quite unstable because you're pretty much dependent on weather conditions. You may be having good wind one day and not that good wind the other day. And with this all the storage that you use, you have to be able to compensate and use, along with the green energy, also the traditional sources of energy, because otherwise you're running the risk of not having the full energy. And energy, we believe, is part of your national security. Without having the energy issues resolved, you can't speak of your national security. And we actually saw that in an example of the European countries after the war in Ukraine started, that because of the limited access in this, after they stopped buying from Russia, they had to diversify and they couldn't find the immediate suppliers. And that put the national security of these countries at risk. And as I said, we are one of the countries that started supplying oil and gas to Europe in order for them to go through this challenging times.
Talking about national security, it's not only energy, it's the bad experience you went through. You showed us the pictures of Karabakh and Shusha. How was the experience of this reconstruction and economic revival of these occupied territories? Because once it was supposed to declare independence also, but you again claimed that. Then again you started massive reconstruction and economic recovery plans. How is it possible? Because it is related to Nepal also, because we also came from a long, decade-long instability. Then we are also in the road ahead to reconstruct our economy. So how do you relate that to Nepal and Azerbaijan?
So I think our experience is mixed. We have mixed feelings about this. First, because just because you occupy some territory, it doesn't necessarily lead to the total devastation of all the buildings, right? So normally, just the fact of occupation shouldn't lead to this scorched earth policy where you obliterate all the buildings and you destroy all the religious monuments, you destroy all the cultural shrines. Unfortunately, that's what Armenia did to Azerbaijan through those years of occupation, and that's why we found the territory completely destroyed. So that is one of the most immediate challenges, that you want to bring your people back, but you can't just leave them in the middle of the desert because it's deserted land. You have to build proper infrastructure for them to live in and to go back to normalcy. Second is the mines that I mentioned, more than 1 million mines, around 1.5. And in order for you to execute those infrastructure projects, you have to clear those territories of the mines first. And that takes a lot of time. And I think if we didn't have the problem with mines and unexploded ordinances, we could have completed this at a faster speed, at a faster pace. But in the meantime, I should say that many international observers, and I know that you also visited Karabakh, they mentioned that the speed is extraordinary because we managed to build 2 international airports in those territories, in Zangilan and in Fizuli, in the last 3 years, and now building yet another airport in the city of Lachin, and that should be done in the coming months. And with that, we will be having 9 international airports in Azerbaijan. So these are two immediate challenges we have. You have to build 9 cities from scratch, and of course you are not building old towns. You are building now smart cities, smart villages, using all the state-of-the-art technology, and that requires a lot of funding. And second, that in order for you to do that, so you have to clear those lands from mines first. So these are all interlinked, because there's one problem that needs to be resolved before you can move on and resolve another problem. So these are all linked. So that is our experience, but we have been able, as I said, to bring back around 20,000 so far. Our aim, our plan, there are 3 stages, between 22 to 26, 140,000 persons going back to their homeland. Between 26 to 30, we'll have another chunk, and then between 2030 and 2040, this will be the 3rd phase of our program. So our government always takes a systematic and holistic view of the problems it has to face and resolve. And this is exactly the approach that we've also used in bringing back life to Karabakh and to the liberated areas.
That you talked about, all these plans, is one part. Reconstruction of physical infrastructure is one part. But reconstruction of livelihoods, that's another part. How did you deal with that?
Reconstruction of the
livelihood. Jobs and everything, because you are building new cities.
As I said, that's an enormous task. Actually, if you look at the, I think it's off now. Yeah. If you look at, can you hear? Yeah. If you look at how much pressure it puts on our government, it's huge pressure, because all the line agencies and ministries, including the Minister of Health, Minister of Science and Education,
and other line ministers, they are in full swing in order to complete all of the projects under their ministries, because without having the schools, hospitals, without having the private dwellings, the State Committee for Architecture and State Planning, all these agencies, they are on a day-to-day basis working 24/7 in order to execute the projects, because without that we won't be able to meet the timelines for bringing back the displaced persons. So as you correctly mentioned, Excellency, that is a prerequisite. It's not about just bringing people back and leaving them in the middle of nowhere. It's about bringing them back to normal lives where the kids can go to schools, they can enjoy the public health services, they can actually use any government services they need to. And so far, as I said, a few thousand living there, and so far so good. I mean, we have been able to, at this stage, to accomplish this first phase and the tasks of the first phase.
With this, I will come to the floor, so afterwards also I'll come back to you. There is a distinguished guest, so many learned people, ex-ambassadors and honorable member of parliaments. So I want the mics, please. There are mics, please feel free to ask the question. Please introduce yourself first, then ask the question to the point. Please.
Good afternoon to everybody here, and I thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's a wonderful presentation. You could understand your country, Azerbaijan. I've been to 74 countries, but I promise you, Azerbaijan is the 75th. I'm very encouraged, and visa is so easy to get. Number one problem is visa here for Nepalese people. So you have made the visa so easy. I think a lot of people will be encouraged to go to your country. Now I have a small query, Excellency. During your presentation, you said solidarity with AIDIA and these developed countries and climate issues. You know, climate issue is a very important issue for us also. Our government is initiating Sagarmatha Samvad after 2 weeks, and there is also climate issue. My question to you, that what kind of solidarity Azerbaijan will be giving to LDCs? Is just a moral support or more than that? Thank you.
Please introduce yourself, Ambassador.
Oh, sorry, I'm Mohan Krishna. I'm former Ambassador to France and also founder president of Center for Diplomacy and Development in Kathmandu. Thank you.
Your question was about dead seas.
Yeah?
You said dead seas?
LDC, yeah. These developed countries.
For landlocked countries.
Nepal is also
We had this, thank you, Ambassador, for your question. We had this discussion, by the way, yesterday with my counterpart as part of the political consultations. The challenges that the landlocked countries face, they are similar, but they are not the same. So, for example, the melting of glaciers in Nepal and the global warming that brings it, it's one part of the problem. In Azerbaijan, global warming and the climate changes brings a completely different problem. It's not the rising sea level, but it is Caspian Sea getting shallower year on year. And there are some experts that suggest that in the next 100 years, 25% of the Caspian Sea, which is vital for our economy and for our livelihood, can get shrunk, and maybe we can lose almost the quota of the sea. So as part of this organization, there are a number of initiatives. I know that I may not be very specific now, but part of the things that we do also comes from our presidents of COP29. We've come about 9 initiatives by our president as part of our presidency in order to address issues of climate change, but also the support that we provide to the landlocked countries. So they could be humanitarian projects, they could be the research in the field of global climate change and the consequences of it. And also, as I said, we've during the various force majeure events and the devastating consequences that those events bring, we provide humanitarian assistance to the country. So it's working together, understanding these challenges. As I said, they're not same challenges, they're similar challenges because the root cause of those challenges is the same. But the effect, if compared Nepal and Azerbaijan, it's a completely opposite effect. It's not the rising sea level that we're facing, it's exactly the problem that the tides turn and the sea gets shallower. And you have the problem of the melting glaciers and all the challenges that it brings. So as part of that organization, we'll continue to contribute to this overall common issues. that the landlocked countries face.
I'm Shirish Pradhan from media. I want to ask a few questions like what is the viewpoint of Azerbaijan regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, ongoing war, and how is it impacting the other European or Asian countries? And secondly, what are the potentiality of cooperation in the tourism front between Nepal and Ukraine? And finally, what is the possibility of export, import, trade between Nepal and Azerbaijan? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure you meant not Nepal and Ukraine. So when it comes to tourism. So first on war, it's a big tragedy. Two countries that are very close to us, very historically been part of the same country, of the Soviet Union. We have huge diaspora in both countries. In the first hours of the war, we started providing and still continue to provide humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Actually, one of our companies, which is the state national energy company, the oil and gas company called SOCAR, they have gas stations across Ukraine. So we, in the first hours of the war in February 2022, we started providing free fuel to fire trucks and ambulances in Kiev and around Kiev. We committed to help Ukraine to reconstruct one of the cities outside, in the outskirts of Kiev. It's a town called Irpin, which was devastated, and now we're in the process of helping them to rebuild that town. We've built a school, and we're also financing a number of other social projects in that town, also across Ukraine in general. We provided electric generators to Ukraine. This is one of the important supplies for Ukraine because the electric grid comes under the attack of Russian missiles. In the meantime, in terms of our position on international law, we have always been consistent that the rules and principles of an international law must be adhered. So we support the territorial integrity and the internationally recognized territories of Ukraine. That is our position, and that is something, by the way, that we suffered from in the first Karabakh war, as the basic principles of international law were violated as part of the aggression by Armenia against Azerbaijan. So we have been consistent also as a member of the non-aligned movement in supporting and promoting and advocating for the fundamental principles of international law. So that is our position. In the meantime, since we have close relations with Russia, we did not join the unilateral sanctions imposed by Russia by some of the countries of the West. So we continue to trade. We continue to trade with Ukraine, with Russia. Russia actually is one of the largest trading partners in Azerbaijan. I believe it comes third in our list of trade partners at the moment. So this is where we stand, and of course we call on ceasefire, and we hope that the violence will stop, and that will of course be in the interest of the region, be in the interest of Azerbaijan as a true friend to both countries. With respect to tourism, we had that discussion too. So as I said, we have experience in generating around currently 3 million, 30% of the size of our population in tourism. We believe there are two factors that affect tourism. First is whether you have a direct flight with the country. If you look at our experience with other countries, including countries such as India, Pakistan, China, once we open direct flights with those countries, the numbers skyrocketed immediately. So there are two things. First is a direct flight, and second is how easy it is for you to get a visa. As an ordinary citizen, without diplomatic and service passports, how easy for an ordinary citizen of Nepal to get a visa in order to travel to Azerbaijan. As I said, one challenge is tackled because it is easy now for the citizens of Nepal because you're on the list of these privileged countries that can get this e-visa through the Assam service. Second, the second challenge is still a challenge because we don't have direct flights. Currently, this is something we put on our list. We have to approach the respective agencies here and in Azerbaijan in order to see whether they see a business case in order to open those direct flights. And direct flights, sometimes those are political decisions. But in most of the cases, those are commercial and business decisions. So the agencies, the aviation agencies, they have to make sure that they will be profitable if they run direct flights between these destinations. But as I said, you have two neighbors, China and India, right? So we have direct flights with India, and it's not only one location, a few locations, and also we have direct flights also a few locations with China. So from that perspective, geographically, distance-wise, it is possible. We do fly to this region, but in terms of having a business case or not, it's something that we'll still need to take a look at. And the trade is almost negligible now. Unfortunately, we've witnessed some rise in the trade recently. There was some import of carpets from Nepal to Azerbaijan. That was one single large transaction on our list, but yesterday we also discussed that there are a lot of untapped opportunities because we should consider all the goods and items which we could trade, given our economy. Obviously, one of the usual suspects on our list is energy products. It's crude oil, it's LNG that we trade through our SOCAR trading, through a company called SOCAR Trading, which is a trading arm of our national company. Fruits, I know this is one of the products that we also export, actually one of the most popular products that we export to the neighboring countries, and all the other items. And in the meantime, I know that you don't have that much trade. I believe your export is around $1 billion, while you import a lot. And part of your import is energy, because you have to import energy. And for that, it's something that we believe we could consider and expand our cooperation in that field. So the baseline is low. Normally it means it's both good news and bad news. Bad news because 30 years it's still low, but good news, there's a lot of potential, because you can actually take it up very easily, because it's at such a low level now.
I was just in the meantime, yeah, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Excellency, for your wonderful presentation. I'm Saurabh, Foreign Policy Researcher. So my question is, what is your message to Nepal, based on your experience in dealing with regional conflicts, territorial conflicts, managing geopolitical interest, and facilitating trans-regional energy developments? Thank you.
I'll add in that, how do you just answered his question, like you have a good trade with Russia also, you have a good trade with Ukraine also. And how do you strike balance between these two fighting parties?
Well, striking balance first, this is not the relationship that was created when the war started, right? We have the long history of relationship. We have large diasporas in both countries, in Russia and Ukraine, if we go back to that topic again. We have mixed families, and obviously we faced a lot of issues in the first days of war because we had to evacuate our citizens. Most of them have mixed families to Azerbaijan. So striking balance, I think it's a question of art, right? It's not science. It's not something you can calculate. It's a question of the relationship between the political leaders. It's a question of your wisdom. Our leader, our president, is considered to be a wise politician with a visionary outlook, and that is almost sort of a shared view around the table now. Your question about what is our message to Nepal, if I understand it right, you mean it in the context of the conflict? Okay. Well, our experience of this armed aggression by Armenia, I mean, the fact that something that we've learned is that, unfortunately, despite the fact that we adhere to the basic principles of international law, in some cases, they're not operational. And in our case, we had the 4 resolutions of the highest body that is in charge of peace and security in the world, which is the United Nations Security Council, 4 resolutions in the same year saying this is Azerbaijan, demanding Armenia withdraw its occupying forces completely, unconditionally, immediately. Even with that, for 30 years, no sanctions imposed on Armenia, no tangible steps taken, and at some point we realized that some of the big powers are simply interested in preserving the status quo. And we kept hearing these messages that the most important thing that there is no war. And we disagreed with that statement because the occupation didn't happen as a sign of goodwill or gesture. It was a result of the war. So if there is wrong, you have to react to that, and you have to do the wrong. You have to rectify the wrong. And if there is some injustice out there, you cannot simply say, as long as there are no hostilities, there is no war, we're happy with that. Well, the co-chairs of the Minsk group, US, France, and Russia, they were happy there was no war, no hostilities. Armenia was happy because it was controlling almost 20% of our territories. They were building infrastructures. They were growing crops there. They were connecting the electric grid to the national grid and using all the resources that were actually sovereign resources of Azerbaijan. And the only party that was suffering from this situation was Azerbaijan. So at some point we realized that if they continue like that, it won't be taking anywhere. And you're aware of many frozen conflicts around the world where some parties call on a ceasefire, on a status quo, and they are happy because they don't have much to lose, right? These are the countries far away from the zone of the conflict. The parties that suffer, the party that suffers actually the one that was the subject of aggression and the victim of that situation. So you can't simply continue calling on peace without understanding the gist of the conflict. And unless you react to injustice, that will always lead to a new escalation. And we've seen a lot of escalations in the world in the last 2 or 3 years, right? There are many more conflicts these days than they were 5 years ago. Some people saying there are around more than 100 conflicts, open conflicts, at different stages around the world now. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but that is our experience. And now, having liberated the area, having enforced those 4 resolutions of the Security Council, the situation has restored, and now we can talk about peace and stability in the region. Without that, it was not possible. And by the way, it may sound ironic, but it is also in the interest of Armenia, because now we are talking to them, now we're discussing projects, now we are talking about the peace agreement and normalization. Because without that, without liberation of our lands, that would not have been possible.
Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
Your Excellency, I'm Major General Binoj Vastant, retired from the Nepalese Army. I think it was an excellent presentation on how foreign policy of Azerbaijan and the challenges and opportunities that you've been tackling so well. Acknowledging the strategic views, I have 3 points that addresses Nepal and Azerbaijan's. One is the geographic realities. Secondly, the geopolitical commonalities. And the third is the national interest commonalities that we have. As your foreign policy is directed by multi-sector and multilateral approaches, how do you see the future of NAM and security diplomacy balancing all these 3? Thank you.
The role of NAM, the non-aligned.
NAM and the security.
So first, in this fragmented world that we're facing now, we had a much more stable situation 2 years ago. Stable in the sense that, of course, they were cold or frozen conflicts, but they were not open. They were not. They were in a standoff position. We knew that there were heightened tensions among the countries, Russia, Ukraine, since it didn't actually start in 2022. It started in 2014, right? So some people say it's more than 10 years now. It's not a conflict of 3 years, it's a conflict of 10 years. Israel, Palestine, we've been there for 80 years now. So in this new fragmented world, we believe that the role of middle powers and the members of the global south, they increase. And a number of organizations such as BRICS, such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they are playing an increasingly important role in international politics. So we believe that the members of the Global South and the NAM, the non-aligned movement, of course that will require leadership by the chair. During our chairmanship, we put a lot of resources in order to bring about a lot of new initiatives, the Parliamentary Network, the Youth Network, Women Network, vaccine nationalism fight against some of the countries of the West, against that notion in general. So with that dedicated leadership, organizations like NAM, as the second largest institution after the UN, will definitely play a bigger role. Of course, when you have 120 countries around the table, it's hard to talk about any consensus. because some member states of NAM, as you know, they're now even in open conflict, right? And that was our experience too. It took us a lot of efforts in order to promote and advance common agenda issues. That is a challenge. That is a challenge, but we have to live with it. But other than that, given this new situation and the standoff between the big powers, especially with the trade wars, especially where some countries are openly supporting some of the conflicting parties in those conflicts, we believe that we should enhance the role of NAM, and we believe the organization like NAM will have a better future. But for that, as I said, we need to work together, because unless we really mean it, we won't be able to implement this vision. Security. And your question on security was just to clarify, what was the question on security?
It's about the security or defense diplomacy that you manage among the big powers.
Well, yeah, everybody, I know that, I believe you also have this line from that you are in between two big neighbors, right? Largest markets, the big political powers, and that of course brings a lot of challenges with it. We're not immediately in the same situation, but we also have the big player Russia in the north, we have Iran in the south, and both countries are under sanctions. That of course brings a lot of challenges also when it comes to the trade turnover and economic development in general. So as I said, I don't believe there's a magic formula or a crystal ball you could use in order to copy and paste the same model. What is important, as we've learned also from experience of other former Soviet countries, that you have to manage your relationship. Because in politics, you can't simply take it for granted. The leaders change, the people change, the sentiments in those countries and societies towards you change. So you have to always check the pulse and make sure that you actively managing your relationship. And there is a saying that if you are not at the table, you are part of the menu, right? So we always chose to be at the table in order not to be part of the menu. But these countries, there's only one choice. You negotiate, you talk, and you are active.
Hello, Minister. It's very nice. This is Vijay Kant Karna, former Nepalese ambassador to Denmark, and I'm a chair of a think tank, Center for Social Innovation and Foreign Policy. My question is the last answer you were mentioning about the geopolitics rivalry in Central Asia. I've seen your country is the member of Commonwealth independent states. Same time you have a strategic partnership with China, and you have a very close relation with the Western power, including US and other European partners. So how you are navigating all these competing countries in the Central Asia? I've seen the President see some of the major policy statements he made in Central Asian countries. One of your countries, he made some of the Belt and Road Initiative and many of the major policy statements. So how the Azerbaijan, you have a problem with Armenia, and that you have very difficult time because of the member of CIS, and both the countries are fighting, Ukraine and Russia. So how you are navigating from all these geopolitical challenges? Thank you.
So I think it's a $1 million question. I mean, everybody is asking the same question, how do you navigate that? So I think there are two principles, or maybe three principles. First, national interests. We are very open about our national interests, and whenever we enter those alliances or strategic partnership documents, we put our national interests first, and we are open and transparent about them with our counterparts. Second is the fact that if we enter into an agreement or an alliance with one particular country, we're also making sure this is not against any third countries. And that is important, especially in our geopolitics. Because if you have good relations with one country and your neighbor is an enemy with that very country, you have to give some comfort to your neighbor that your territory or this alliance will never be used against your neighbor. And that is something we've always cared about and been very serious about, and something that we promoted as an idea. And that is why Azerbaijan continues to successfully navigate through this uncharted waters. And third is walking the talk. I mean, there are many leaders who say one thing and they do completely different thing. So I can proudly say that our president, whatever he says, he does it, and by now he has a reputation of a man who can actually say, and if he says that, he will deliver. If he promises, it's like his signature. I mean, his word is equivalent to his signature. It's something that he's built as a reputation in our region. And that is why he gets this treatment and respect in all the neighboring countries, but also in big powers such as China.
Namaste. I'm Brigadier General retired Prem Singh from Nepalese Army. Sir, I worked for United Nations Peacekeeping Commander, Medium Commander in Lebanon, Iraq, after the first invasion from Iraq. Then in Croatia, finally in Haiti. His Excellency, I do see the power of the United Nations has been declining. When I worked about 90s, the United Nations was very powerful. Look at the present situation. My query is about the non-countries, non-aligned moment countries, who would be the guardians? If the United Nations capacity, its dignities getting declined, we give the example of the Palestinian issues recently, even the Ukraine and Russian issues. So I'm worried about the non-countries future. So what would be your suggestion? I have a suggestion in order to strengthen the NAM. Thank you, His Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I had a similar question, and I think try to clarify my position and our position with respect to NAM. Again, as I said, one challenge is the number of members. Being a huge organization like the UN, where you also have, one of the reasons you have those challenges because there are a lot of conflicting interests at the table. So with smaller size regional organizations where 5 to 10 countries can have their interests aligned better with huge organizations like NAM, it is a challenge. So I think I don't think I have a simple advice for us or for you. I think we need to keep promoting the ideas of NAM. First, by not joining the military blocs, by offering our good offices for the conflicting parties, given the number of conflicts around the world, as I said, they're unfortunately increasing. There are discussions for many years now about the reform of the United Nations, specifically of the Security Council of the UN, because we're seeing situations where one country, the permanent member, vetoes decisions that are supported by other 14 members, including 4 other permanent members, right? Which is, and we saw this in the case of Russia, we saw that in the case of US, so I don't think there's a right or wrong state. It just happens depending on the conflict. They clash, and when they clash, they take a position which actually goes against the position taken by other 14 members of the Security Council, but also against the predominant view at the United Nations General Assembly, because those resolutions are immediately taken to the UNGA, and you can see based on the voting, 150, 160 countries have the same shared view, and most of them are, by the way, the members of NAM. But then we've been discussing this for years without any concrete steps being taken, right? So our view is that we need to reinforce the institutions, but also in terms of the reform, we need the reform is necessary in order to make a more efficient and more workable organization. And as I said, we ourselves in our case suffered because in the early years we had this naive period and honeymoon period after the Soviet Union, believing in international law and thinking that if there are resolutions of the Security Council, they would be implemented immediately. So we were looking for this one big right judge who could actually adjudicate the parties and simply say this is wrong. You have to pull your forces back. But it never happened. And then we realized, we learned, we had this painful learning curve in the last 3 decades, understanding that this is not how it works. So this is the hypocrisy of the world, but this is our world. I mean, if we have to save it, we have to save it. We can't rely on aliens.
I am Nahakul Kesi. I have one quick question about how we can get benefit between the Nepal and India, having relationship between the people to people. Generally, we heard from the government side, government tie-up is always strong. Even since last 30 years, we have a diplomatic relationship. But if we want to strengthen our relationship between the civil society, people to people, academia, or think tank institute, how we can get learn from the Azerbaijan or Nepal can get benefit, or how Azerbaijan can lesson learn from us, because we have a strong civil society in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think, again, going back to our discussions yesterday, we spoke about education. We are proud to see Nepali students in Azerbaijan, and as I said, we have this program, by the way, within the non-aligned movement, the program that we launched back in 2018, just before we became the president of NAM, the chair of NAM. And that allows us to provide the scholarships to the students and youth from the NAM members. That's one. Second, we do have the joint research projects between the institutions, and I'm glad that Excellency was part of that, benefited from that project, so you could probably share your experience as well. We yesterday spoke about culture. It's a wonderful country. Today in the morning we had a chance to go around in Kathmandu and see the Monkey Temple and some other cultural sites which are on the list of UNESCO. By the way, we have five World Heritage Sites registered with UNESCO. I believe we have 9. But if you look at the number of intangible cultural properties, we are in top 5 in the world. We have 24 intangible cultural properties that are registered with UNESCO. So UNESCO is in my portfolio, so I know this well. And that is also culture, is also joint cultural projects, and exchanging experience in that field is also something we have in mind. Tourism, we have already discussed. No issues with visa, but as I said, no direct flights. Of course, that makes your life more difficult if you have to travel by Dubai or Doha. But I hope that we'll have more people coming from Azerbaijan to Kathmandu. And I do have some friends who actually come and climb on Mount Everest, or at least they tell me that they climbed on Mount Everest, but I never independently checked that. But they do have some photos, nice photos that suggest that they do, at least close, in some close vicinity to the mountain.
You can go to the base camps, 1 and 2 reach the
Yes, 5,000 are okay, so we're not that over-ambitious. And so I think through this soft diplomacy and through these projects, and as I said, there are joint projects between the NGOs and the think tanks and the research institutions, we can promote this people-to-people context. And that is very important for our bilateral ties. Bilateral ties, it's not about just a number in a trade turnover, right? It's not about statistics, it's about people getting to know each other. And the professor shared her experience, people in Baku approaching you and asking for a picture. I mean, the interest that is out there, that it shows when they look at your outfit, that you realize you're from this part of the world, you want to talk to, you want to understand which country you've come from. That's a very good sign. First, it's a sign of hospitality, and our experience with my team now for 2 days now, very hospitable people, very kind, really peaceful. You can say it by the gestures, by the way they talk to you, and the way they act. And I think this is one of the common features that we have and that we share. And the last point on this is that, like Nepal, Azerbaijan is also multilingual, multicultural, multi-religious. We have more than 50 ethnic groups in Azerbaijan, although it's predominantly Islam, Muslim countries, but in terms of various ethnicities and various strains of Islam, we also have the strong the vibrant Jewish community. Never had any signs of anti-Semitism in Azerbaijan. We have various linguistic and religious groups, Catholic community, the Orthodox community, and the Atashgah, the fire temple that you visited, Excellency, which, by the way, brings a lot of tourists from India, from Indus, because of the fire temple that we have, which dates back centuries. So this is something that we need to capitalize on, and I truly believe in that.
I'm Suresh Kimre, Senior Associate at Law ANS Legal Consultant, and I'm also pursuing my Masters in International Trade Law. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate Azerbaijan on liberating and reclaiming the Armenian occupied territories, and also thank you for your presentation. So as a victim of aggression and occupation ourselves, I would like to ask on a very gentle note, how does Azerbaijan view the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and what does Azerbaijan favors in terms of solution on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine? Thank you.
Well, it's another huge tragedy that is unfolding in front of our eyes now since October 23. Of course, if you go back into history, it's almost 80 years of conflict now. Another conflict that's been out there after the Second World War. So first, we call on that violence stops immediately, and second, our traditional position on that was a two-state solution, and that's a position that we have always supported within the various organizations, including the United Nations. If you look at how we voted for the resolutions calling on a two-state solution, and also within the Organization of Islamic States, where we're a member. So that position has been consistent, that continues to be our position, that there has to be two states out there living in harmony.
Honorable Member of Parliament want to ask one question. So this will be last question. After this formal dialogue, we will have tea and we can have informal discussion also. So please.
Thank you. I raised my hand, but you didn't see me. It's fine because I'm in front. It's very easy to see at the behind. Actually, Honorable, it is a very wonderful presentation, outstanding, that we can see your progress and prosperity for the people and the country. We must learn it, and we need to look upon ourselves as well. Talking about as a parliamentarian, I think we need to have more collaborations between two parliamentarians so that we can exchange our experiences, our thoughts between us. So visit is of course important, but if we can do like online meetings that we can share with each other, that is one point. And another is you just raised that that is really true. Weather will not be the same all the time, like wind and solar, but somehow stable is hydro power. So I see in your presentation that thousands of kilometers that you developed, pipelines, oil lines, and you can even do trade to other countries, from Caspian Sea to Black Sea, sea to sea, and land to land. So it's like regional cooperations, as we believe world is becoming so close, like a village, a small village. So is there any scope from your eyes that we can collaborate in hydroelectricity, even we are far, geographical far from each other, but as I mentioned, there is no barriers for now in current moment. So if we can explore such kind of opportunities for the people of both the countries and for the regional level, so is there any collaboration that we can do in that regards? And we are very happy to see that you are having so much oil and gas. Looking to the climate change programs, we are collaborating with each other internationally in the world. We are in the same forum, and we are raising this voice in Baku and other COP summits as well, that to mitigate carbon emission, fossil fuel free world we are talking, that it is very important how to mitigate this emission, that we can collaborate more in the stable hydroelectricity power, that we can collaborate with each other. Maybe the business people from Azerbaijan can do invest here in hydro sector. That is one chapter. And another curiosity that I think we need to work together in climate sector, that is having very difficulties for Nepal, because I'm focusing on Nepal and Azerbaijan relations now. We are facing difficulties and challenges to have climate fund in Nepal. So how come that UNFCCC can do some good framework to release such fund for Nepal? Because we, as you see, you also mentioned that melting our mountains and seeing the black mountains instead of white mountains. So how to protect them? But we need more finance, climate finance for that. But we are having shortage of it and difficulties. Even we raised their $1.3 trillion, but only succeeded for $300 billion. But how come we can get access to get that fund? So if we can collaborate in international forum, getting such fund for the vulnerable people of Nepal, vulnerable areas of Nepal, that will be the most genuine part for the collaborations between two countries. Thank you.
Thank you. There are two things. One is hydropower, that
Yes.
Nepal and Azerbaijan can, and the climate change.
Parliament, excellent. They started with the Parliament. Thank you, excellent. First, I'm delighted to get to know you. Very glad that we know each other now, and I mentioned during the consultations yesterday that there's a friendship group in our Parliament dedicated to Nepal, so it's Azerbaijan-Nepal Friendship Group with 4 members of our Parliament, and one of them is, as we said, the focal point or coordinator of that group. So I hope that in the very early days of our return to Azerbaijan, I'll be able to put you in contact with the Member of Parliament in charge of Nepal, and then, as you correctly mentioned, you could start off with an online meeting, which could be followed by some physical exchanges. So we very much believe in parliamentary diplomacy. Actually, this is one of the reasons why we established the parliamentary network of the non-aligned movement. That was purely our initiative, and with the support of other fellow members, we've established the NAM network, the parliamentary network of NAM. Now, I believe more than 60 countries are actively participating, including Nepal, in that network. So it shouldn't be only the foreign offices of 2 countries speaking to each other. Parliamentarians and MPs, they are important pillars of these bilateral ties. With respect to your second question, the climate change and hydropower. First, hydropower is one of the sources that we use in Azerbaijan. So the huge potential that we have is wind, because it's a windy place, especially in offshore. In the Caspian Sea, we have around 157 gigawatts of wind power. That is for renewable energy. For solar, we have, and wind onshore, we have around 23 to 27 gigawatts each. But we also have hydro, and especially in Karabakh, in the liberated areas, we're building the small hydropower stations. We also have a huge joint project with Iran on the Araz River, on a joint, which is actually the shared border with Iran, which goes through the along that river. And we have built and will be commissioning the hydropower station on Araz River with Iran, and that is, I believe, 240 megawatts of power. So 25% of our rivers, they were under occupation for 30 years, because 25% of our river surface, they come from Karabakh, from the liberated areas. So now we have full access, and we have abundant rivers over there, and we've started constructing small hydropower stations on those rivers, around 500 megawatts in total. We have built around 170 megawatts, but hoping to complete and get the number to 500 megawatts in the coming years. And with that, we will be using hydropower as one of the sources of renewable energy. Given your experience, it's something that I'm aware of. We also had that discussion with our ambassador. In terms of your deep expertise, in terms of your background, having this expertise in hydropower plants, it's something we will be conveying as a message to the Minister of Energy that is in charge of these projects in Azerbaijan. And I'm sure that we can start with some online meetings and exchanges, the best practice exchanges and sharing experiences in this field. And hopefully that would lead us to some feasible projects that we could undertake. So this is interesting, one. Second, this is one of the sources that we use. It's not the main source, but it is one of the sources that we use. But as I said, we would very much be interested in learning your experience. And the last portion of the question, the landlocked countries and the climate change. One of the historic achievements we've been able to get as a result of COP29 was fully operationalizing the loss and damage fund, because it existed on paper for many years, almost 10 years, But in the meantime, the countries could not agree on the full functioning of that fund. And now, as a result of the last COP, we can proudly say that it is operational and it has funds, and the small and island developing states and the landlocked countries, other countries susceptible to climate change, to adverse climate change, they can access the funding there. And the last point, which is important, during the discussions between the presidents, there was an agreement that COP29 is something that will exist for us till November, when Brazil takes over as the next chair. So we will be stepping down as a chair of COP. But in the meantime, this is part of our foreign policy priorities, green energy and global climate change. So we're very much interested, and there were discussions around deepening our bilateral ties on on climate change. So we shouldn't link it only to our presidents of COP29. And starting from today, we are planning to start building our bilateral relations also in the field of climate change. So that is something that was discussed, that is our plan. And as I said, two countries both have similar issues, both are landlocked, both are susceptible to climate change, and this only warrants a deeper cooperation between two nations.
With this, I thank His Excellency Mammadov for his presentation and for all the answers he has given. And I would like to present him a small token of love from AIDIA. Please, Program Director of AIDIA, Sajina Rai, will present His Excellency the token of love. Yeah.
Thank you.
It looks exactly the same.
Thanks so much. Very touchy president. I noted that.
There is one small gift for you. Cookery. Yeah. Small gift from AIDIA.
I hope I won't need to use it one day.
You don't need to use this because we, Azerbaijan and Nepal, both are peaceful countries.
I just keep it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now, I would like to, please have a seat. I would like to call Sajina Rai, Program Director of AIDIA, for vote of thanks. And we'll have IT and we'll continue our informal discussion. Thank you.
That's it.
So it is my honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Affairs on this occasion. First and foremost, I extend our deepest gratitude to His Excellency Deputy Minister, Foreign Minister of Republic of Azerbaijan, Mr. Elnur Mammadov, for gracing us with your presence and delivering such an insightful and thought-provoking lecture. Your deep reflection on this foreign trajectories of Azerbaijan have truly enlightened us and broadening our understanding of the region's diplomatic directions and strategic outlook. We deeply appreciate your time and generous sharing of your knowledge. A special word of thanks to Honorable Dr. Anjan Shakya, Member of National Assembly of Nepal, and we thank her for gracing this event, and we wish her all the very best for her role as the coordinator of the Nepal-Azerbaijan Parliamentary Working Committee. We are equally thankful to His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Anjan for your unwavering support and for making this event possible today. So your commitment to fostering ties between Nepal and Azerbaijan is sincerely valued. So, and heartfelt thanks goes to the Azerbaijan delegation team for accompanying us on this important occasion. So we wish great success and meaningful achievements during your visit. And we hope that your engagements here and this visit have paved the way for lasting cooperation between Nepal and Azerbaijan. Finally, warm thank to all the participants, dignitaries and guests who have joined us this afternoon. Your presence have made this even more meaningful, and your continued support encourages us in our mission to serve as a platform for dialogue, diplomacy, and global exchange. Thank you all. And we have snacks outside. Please join us, and we have informal talk. Thank you.